You can also configure or change, add or remove users or change user settings like the password. So like if you would want to here say configure, let's say user, you want to get in there, configure network, we have done that. If you want to change any network settings, configure password is going to be for the current user connected with on the console, and configure user. Of course, you can say add, delete, disable, enable. In case you have disabled a user, you can re-enable it. You can configure the max failed logins option, which means after that amount of failed logins, it means the user gets disabled, gets locked basically. So configure user, you can say add Christian with a privilege of config Christian. It should be priv. And the password would be Christian. So say configure user, add the username, the privilege level, access level. So config means that's what I want to do, like to be an admin. And of course then you put in the password in there, which in my case didn't match. Okay, there we go. We should also have show users, ideally. Show. Yeah, it doesn't show the users. We can look at the users via the Linux system specific commands. So that doesn't show you. It doesn't let you to see the users. You can look at in there only via the specific Linux commands. You can also verify the module state from the ESA. Like for example, if somebody doesn't have access to the Firepower module and you ask, but has access to the ESA, and you ask him for confirmation if the module is up and running, then you can go on the ESA and say show module SFR details. You say show module SFR details. There you go. It tells you the software version you're running for the Firepower system, the state that is ready. Data plane status means the backplane is functional. This is important because the backplane may be misfunctional, and then you cannot actually send traffic to the Firepower. Console is ready. Is not occupied by somebody basically. And then of course it tells you the IP address, the network mask, and the default gateway, and that it is enabled by default for web traffic and TLS, which is going to be used for management from the Fireside Management Center. We have gone through those commands and also to that. And if you want to troubleshoot some network access, so for example, let's assume that you configure the Firepower with an IP address, with DNS, with with NTP, with everything in there, and it doesn't have access to the internet, or doesn't have access to the network. So you may want to be able to do some kind of troubleshooting, which unfortunately it requires expert mode access. Not unfortunately, but the commands are not visible from the regular mode, from the non-expert mode. So you have to go in the expert mode, and then you're going to be able to use NSLOOKUP or traceroute or ping. So let's go and say expert. Otherwise, you don't have to use the commands. So session SFR console. Session SFR console. And then you say, so go into the expert mode. Otherwise, as you can see, pretty much you have only show commands, configuration commands to change the network configuration, and pretty much that's it. Of course, you can change to in there. So let's go to expert mode. There we go. It should ask you for root in general. It depends if you have entered, if you have been there before or not. It should ask you for the root password, which is the same as the admin password, which you changed when you have pre-configured the Firepower module from the CLI. So you can say, of course, NSLOOKUP, and I'm going to say that inilab.local. That's something which I know is resolvable. So this confirms that DNS is functional, or of course it confirms that you have DNS access to the DNS server, and that's functional. You can of course say, for example, I'm going to ping, let's say, a device from the network 555.2, for example. Not from NSLOOKUP, I gotta say exit and then ping 555.2. And by default it states that ICMP open socket operation not permitted. So by default you cannot ping, that's restricted. One of the options what you can do to be able to ping is that of course you can say you can verify the permissions for that process to run. So you say ls from list all bin ping, and you have to do, of course, you have to be a Linux engineer to be able to understand those permissions. So one of the way to fix this is to, as you can see, it's only available to the root user. So if you're not the root user, what you can do, you can change the permissions in there. So you can say with that command sudo change mode u+s bin ping. So you change the permissions, and you're going to be able to ping also without being present in root mode. So now you can say ping 555.2. This ASA doesn't have proper access. Let me go on this one because this is what I'm running. I'm using in my setup session SFR console. Let me quickly connect in there and authenticate. Not required. Let's go to expert mode, and then let's say ping 555.2. The same thing. Let's say sudo change mode. That's one way of fixing it, and then let's ping again. And there we go, it works. So at this point, since we're here, let's also confirm what I was saying. Let's kill this. And at this point when you ping, so this is like management traffic from the Firepower system. So we should confirm that traffic, let's confirm that basically traffic leaves the management port in here, goes in the layer 2 system in the switching path. It is being injected to the ASA back because ASA is the default gateway of my Firepower system, and then it gets routed out on router 2. Which what this means for this traffic to work is that it means that the ASA has to allow that ping packet inbound on this interface on gig02. So any ACL configuration has to allow that traffic. Also, if I have any global ACLs, the traffic has to be allowed. If I don't have inbound ACLs but have a global ACL, it has to be allowed by a global ACL. Then likewise, if I have an outbound ACL applied on this gig00 interface, traffic has to be allowed likewise by that outbound interface. And traffic is going to be routed to router 2. I'm pinging in the loopback of router 2. And then of course for traffic to be allowed back inbound, for the return traffic for the echo reply to be allowed back inbound, if I don't have, for traffic for the echo reply to be allowed back, I have two options. Either I have to inspect ICMP on the ASA, because by default ICMP is not inspected, is not statefully inspected. So the echo, if it's allowed outbound, the echo reply is dropped inbound, or I need to make an ACL exception for that to happen, ACL exception. Or of course I could have I could run in the same security level between those interfaces, which is going to allow traffic back and forth to the SA, even though it's not safely inspected, because it's same security level interface applied. So in my case, if you look on ASA2, on ASA3 in here, and if you say show name-if, I'm running exactly in that setup where all interfaces, so traffic is going to come in ingress on DMZ interface, and it's going to go out on outside interface, but I have the same security level of 0, and I've enabled the capability which states same security traffic permit interface. So the SA is going to allow traffic back and forth to those interfaces, of course assuming there is no access is configured, which if we say show access group, show run access group, it is none. Show run access group. And there we go. Let's say debug ICMP trace to see the ping packets flowing back and forth to the SA, and let's go on the Firepower module to session SFR console. We're in expert mode, so let's ping 5552. There it works, and we see the log messages showing up. We can kill that. We can say show connection detail. So let's kill the ping. Session SFR console, and let's kill the ping. There we go. As you can see, it stated that echo request coming inbound on the DMZ interface from the Firepower and being routed out to the outside interface to router 2. And then echo reply came ingress on the outside interface from router 2 and being routed egress to the DMZ interface. So you expect the traffic flows back and forth to the SA because the SA is the default gateway of the Firepower module. But as you can see, traffic, it's not being sent back and forth to the backplane, but it's being sent back and forth. The Firepower system sends the traffic out on the physical management 00 port of the ASA. And I also saw in here the state, the entry in the connection table. Likewise, of course, you can go and say telnet. Let's telnet on let's telnet. Telnet 5552 Cisco. So you should likewise see a connection in the SA state table, show connection detail. And there we go. Traffic from the TCP from ASA Firepower, that's the source of the traffic. So from the DMZ interface from the SA, this is the source. Send to the destination on the outside to router 2. This is the destination. So traffic flows through the ASA back and forth. Okay, let's disconnect. Let's go back session. Let's say on debug all. Session SFR console. Let's disconnect from router 2. And of course, we can also do trace route. Let's say trace route. But it's not going to work because I'm not going to trace route through the ASA because the ASA by default filters the traffic. It's not going to work because trace route is going to send outbound UDP traffic, outbound UDP echo, while the reply being received to the ASA, which is going to be dropped, is going to be ICMP port unreachable. So we cannot inspect a UDP packet outbound and expect the reply to be ICMP. So the packet is being dropped. You have to make the SA allow that. But still, let's show the trace route. Let's say 172.16.10.100, something locally connected. And likewise, it says permission denied. So the other way to fix this, instead of changing the permission of the command, is to run it as root basically. So say sudo minus, and then the root password is going to be the admin password. You type it in, and then of course it is going to allow you to trace. And there we go. Okay. Pretty much so is it. Let's see if we have any questions so far. So Yasser says, is there a simulation for Firepower on GNS2 Ver or any other? As far as I'm aware, it's not supported. but I haven't used those because I have clearly physical access to the devices. As far as Armor is not supported because probably somebody is going to make it happen at some point, but this one I think is not supported because you cannot, virtualize something into your virtualization by itself. So, but let's confirm that Virl GNS doesn't support it, but let's confirm if Virl supports it. As far as I'm aware, it doesn't. So Virl Firepower. We can actually, it doesn't make sense to go in there. What I'm going to do is let's go to the Cisco's Virl webpage. So Virl supported devices. There we go. So it should be somewhere in here. So Cisco devices, you can see iOS, VIOS, vLayer 2, iOS XR, CSR 1000V, NXOS, and ASAV. So it is not supported. There is another version of a free version of Virl. I think it is called Virl NetBuntu or something. Alternative to Cisco Virl. Free. I forgot what is the name of that. Give me just a couple of seconds. I think a colleague of mine had a post on that. So maybe it's gonna help me. Yeah, still doesn't matter. Let's move on. It is an alternative to Virl, free edition, alternative to Virl, which for sure, I'm sure I've checked a couple of months ago. They support that. For the same reason, I think it's going to be difficult for them to support firepower on Virl, as it is today. Probably in the future they're going to support the unified code, because then you can virtualize one code. But it's clearly difficult to virtualize one code and then run an application on top of that code. So pretty much it makes sense that nobody supports it yet. Yeah, exactly. Thanks Eduardo. It is UnitLab. Thanks for that. Thanks for reminding me. And I'm pretty sure it doesn't support that. So UnitLab supported. There we go. And so it states in here what they support. iOS, of course, IOL, and then in here, let's look for it. Say supports a lot more, but I don't see firepower, and it makes sense. Firepower is not supported. They support SourceFire because SourceFire is again a standalone thing by itself. But so basically, that's you can run SourceFire only, which is the same version I'm running, but as a standalone product, and not running that on top of ASA with Firepower services. So you can use this one, but of course the features are gonna differ a bit back and forth. Okay, there's a question from Yasser. What about INE Labs? So as I stated yesterday, we don't support yet on our racks Firepower services, but clearly sometime this year we're gonna make that happen. Likewise, because also CCI Security Blueprint is gonna change soon, so we need to support that for sure. It's not yet confirmed when that's gonna happen, but we're gonna make that happen for sure.